A CSIRO and NAB partnership chaired by David Thodey and Ken Henry established 5 shifts that Australia needs to make if we really want a future that's both prosperous and sustainable. I took on a panel of these leaders, including Mr Thodey and Dr Henry, and here's just a taste of their thinking. You have made a decision to actually stand down as chairman of National Australia Bank. How do you, on reflection, see the challenge that we have about institutional trust?
It's massive, right? It's massive. And of course I have reflected on this quite a lot, but I was reflecting on that question before we started on this journey, years ago, when, and in fact some of you in the room will recall, in the very first meeting, the responsibility that we have as leaders to chart a course for the nation's future and to take some responsibility for outcomes and not always consider it simply or merely the responsibility of our political leaders to advance the country's interests.
We all need a healthy, vibrant, engaged society on which to do what we do, and it doesn't take much to see that start to unravel, such as Hong Kong or other places, that pretty quickly what we're all seeking to achieve can become unravelled. And things that can unravel it are things like disadvantage or inequality.
Back in the 1980s, I remember we used to marvel at we used to call it economic literacy of the Australian population, but it was really policy literacy. It was understanding of Australia's future and the challenges that it was confronting and what sort of things might be required in order to meet those challenges. We need to rebuild that policy literacy.
I think with increased political instability globally, the role for corporates to stand up and take positions and actually affect change is increasingly required. I think also from a trust perspective, I think there's a lot of social issues dealt with in this report, and corporate Australia has to, for the future of Australia, take positions on that.
Because we are not having, I think, robust, objective, data-driven debate. We're getting people sort of driven by ideology, not by really staring at the facts. And energy, climate change is a classic one where it is complex, and to try to simplify it down to, the bite is just not helpful.
It's a big elephant sitting in this room, I think. Yeah, I mean, seriously, the debate that we've been having in this country for the past 10 years in energy, it's been a bit surreal.
It seems to me that when I talk to businesses, a lot of businesses are now putting in their own internal carbon pricing, yeah?
Yep.
So is this where business is just leading the way?
I think a lot of business is just getting on with it. I can quote Telstra because they're building those big solar farms up north. And that is both a commercial outcome but a very strong social sense of the outcomes they want to stand for.
But if we actually design properly and have more dense built environment, we can actually have more open space. We can have more sunlight. We can mix residential uses. We can have affordable housing, social housing, to-market housing, which creates much stronger social inclusion.
The challenge is to now pick this up and to do something with it without feeling that the only way we can advance Australia is to go down to Canberra and knock on somebody's door and try to get them to change something. I spent 28 years doing that.
Well, there you go. And joining us live now to discuss the national outlook is the CEO of CSIRO, Dr Larry Marshall, here in the studio. And from Melbourne, NAB's Chief Customer Officer, Anthony Healy, who's been very involved. Good morning and welcome to you both. Now, Larry, can I start first? 2 incredibly different scenarios that CSIRO has worked on, depending upon what we do with this future.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's almost 20 scenarios that we looked at, but the 2 that really matter, the upside positive growth scenario and then the downside sort of long, slow slide.
Massive difference to GDP per capita.
Yeah, so we think on the positive side, we can nearly double wages we can nearly halve electricity costs, and we can grow the standard of living by about 30%, the GDP per capita. So I'd kind of like to focus on the upside rather than slow slide into decline.
So, Anthony, bringing you in here, why did, obviously a huge commitment of the chairman's time, of your time, why did NAB decide to go boots and all into this?
Well, I think, Tiki, that the future challenges and opportunities that Australia faces as a nation are ones that can't be solved simply by government or by individual organisations. And so the opportunity to collaborate with 50 other partners from the private sector, from the not-for-profit sector, universities and world-leading research institutions like CSIRO is an important way to collaborate and help solve for those future growth opportunities and challenges so that Australia remains competitive and can continue to grow prosperity into the future.
Larry, I wanted to ask you, when you were brought on as head of CSIRO, it was really to change that organisation from a larger, more bureaucratic, lumbering organisation to one more dynamic, more like the organisations it seeks to work with. How is that going for you, and what have you got here to talk to us about? Because the people are going to be asking, what is that?
Sure. So, to answer your last question first, this is green gold. So gold, like many minerals, we can produce it, but it sometimes has a negative impact on the environment. So you use cyanide and arsenic to make gold. Lithium has similar issues with its production, and also lithium batteries aren't recyclable. So using science to solve seemingly impossible problems, help the environment and help the economy, that's kind of what CSIRO is all about. If I answer your first question, you know, CSIRO was created 100 years ago to make life better in Australia using science, and that's what we do. So in a sense, I think all I'm doing is kind of going back to first principles, going back to our roots to focus CSIRO on making life better for Australians.
Yeah, you've got, obviously, a huge part of the research in your future is hydrogen. That's this tall thing here, is it?
Yeah, we worry about how do we make an orderly transition to low emissions economy without losing the export revenue and all the taxes that the exports pay for healthcare, schools, social services. So we're looking at other industries we could create to take advantage of that shift and give Australia an unfair advantage. So this one's kind of a breakthrough. It turns hydrogen into liquid fuel or vice versa. So it's sort of a way to go from a gas to a liquid, and that means you can use it the way you use gasoline, except it has no emissions.
Right. Anthony, in terms of the action coming from this report, rather than it gathering dust on a shelf, you've announced some pretty big things on the tech side, a big fund. Can you tell us about that and what else might be down the track?
Yes, we have, Tiki, and I think when you look at the shifts that were identified in the report, whether it's the infrastructure and urban shift, industry shift, land use shift, there are areas as Australia's biggest business bank and largest agri-bank that we'll play, I think, a really meaningful role in. And so one of the obvious commitments for us that came out of the research was around the tech sector. And so we made a commitment last week that we will commit $2 billion of additional funding to help grow the tech sector, from startups and emerging tech companies through to high growth and large tech companies. And that'll come in the form of debt funding, in the form of banking services, and of course we'll take the larger clients of ours to the debt capital markets. We partner with a number of accelerators in the country, whether it's the Western Sydney Uni Launchpad, the Macquarie Innovation Precinct in Sydney, Stone and Chalk, and the work we do with NAB Ventures and NAB Labs to help partner with emerging tech companies to grow and to innovate is a really important commitment, and we wanted to put a big number on it to underline the size of the commitment we wanted to make.
Anthony, to discuss one tech company that doesn't need your help, Facebook launching their cryptocurrency this week in Libra. Your thoughts on that and the challenges it poses to traditional financial institutions such as yourselves?
Yes, well, it's an area where you're seeing a lot of disruption, a lot of innovation, and it's an exciting part of the sector. And so Facebook is another example of a large tech company partnering with some payments providers like Visa and MasterCard to innovate with cryptocurrency. And we continue to invest in our own digital payment solutions with other partners as well. And I think this is going to be a very crowded space. And it's one that, you know, we really like innovation, not only because it brings value to our customers and our shareholders, but we also learn from other people's innovations. And from that, we'll watch that closely, and as it evolves, think about what that informs us around our strategies and further areas of innovation for us to bring to our customers.
And Anthony, finally, if I may, who's going to be the next boss at NAB, and are you still in the running?
Well, you know that's a question that you should direct to our board. It's not a question that management ever comments on.
All right, thanks a lot.